The morning call to prayer still echoed in the cool air, and the scent of damp earth felt heavy. A small boy, barely 12 years old, knelt by a fresh grave. His tiny hands smoothed the dirt, over and over again. His tattered clothes and bare feet told a story of a childhood lost too soon. He didn't cry. He knew from experience that tears don't fill an empty stomach, but his eyes. They had a depth that could make a grown man look away in shame. He brushed his palm against the soil. "Dad," he whispered, "you always said that honesty never goes hungry. But it's been 3 days since I've had a single bite. Is my faith still being tested?" Zaid was alone. A fever had swept through the city, taking his parents and leaving him with nothing but his father's advice and an old wooden writing tablet. He lived in the corner of a crumbling alley, a shadow in a busy world. Across town lived Seth Hashim. He was the wealthiest merchant in the city, with a heart as cold as the gold in his vault. To him, people weren't humans. They were just numbers on a balance sheet. He was a man who knew exactly how to turn someone else's desperation into his own profit. On his way to the market, Zaid passed Uncle Karim, an old cobbler who worked near his alley. Karim was poor, but his heart was wide open. He watched Zaid approach, noticing the way the boy's legs trembled with every step. Karim reached into a small cloth wrap and pulled out a piece of dry bread. "Zaid, son, come here," he called out softly. "Take this. Your face is pale. You haven't eaten since yesterday, have you?" Zaid stopped. He looked at the bread, then at the old man's kind eyes. He lowered his head. "I can't, Uncle. That's your lunch. I'll find work, and I'll eat." Dad used to say that unearned bread makes a man weak. Karim sighed, his chest heavy. "I respect that, son. Truly. But you have to stay alive to be a man. Listen, the city is changing. Hard work isn't enough anymore. Go to Seth Hashim's manor. I heard he needs someone honest to manage his ledgers." Zaid hesitated, then nodded a quiet thank you. He began the long walk to the mansion, unaware that he was walking straight toward the greatest test of his life. Inside the manor, Seth Hashim sat on a carved chair, polishing a heavy gold ring. When Zaid entered, the merchant didn't even look up at first. The opulence of the room made Zaid catch his breath, the silk rugs, the gold-trimmed walls, but he stood his ground. Hashim finally glanced at him, his lip curling in disgust. "We don't give handouts here, kid. Get out." Zaid didn't flinch. His voice was steady. "I'm not here for a handout, sir. I'm here for a job. I heard you need a clerk. I can read, I can write, and I know my numbers." Hashim burst into a loud, mocking laugh. He pointed at Zaid's filthy clothes. "You? Look at you. You expect me to trust a street rat with a fortune in accounts?" Zaid pulled out his old wooden tablet. With a steady hand, he carved the merchant's name into the wood. The calligraphy was breathtaking, elegant, sharp, and perfectly balanced. Even the finest masters in the city couldn't match such skill. A dark thought crossed Hashim's mind. A hungry, orphaned boy was perfect for his shady business. He'd be cheap, he'd be desperate, and he'd be easy to control. Hashim stood up, a fake smile stretching across his face. "Fine, you're hired, but I have one rule. In this house, you only see what I want you to see, and you only write what I tell you to write. Do we have a deal?" Zaid was silent for a moment. "Sir," he said softly, "if your truth and my writing are the same, then we have a deal." The work began. Day after day, Zaid sat over the ledgers. Hashim watched him closely. The boy was tireless. More than that, he was painfully honest. He wouldn't let even a single penny go unaccounted for. One evening, as the sun began to set, Hashim called Zaid into his private study. A pile of gold coins sat on the desk, glowing in the candlelight. Hashim pushed a fresh register toward the boy. Zaid, look at this. This is the report for the government officials. I want you to write that we only sold 200 bags of grain this month. Zaid froze. He looked at the book, then back at the merchant. But sir, I recorded the sales myself. We sold 2,000 bags. Why write a lie? Hashim leaned in, his voice dropping to a persuasive whisper. He placed a hand on Zaid's shoulder. Son, this isn't a lie. It's business. If we tell the truth, the taxes will ruin us. Just write the number I told you. And in return, he picked up a gold coin and held it in front of Zaid's eyes. This one coin can change your entire life. No more hungry nights. You can trade that crumbling shack for a real home. Just one stroke of the pen, Zaid. That's all it takes. Zaid stared at the gold. Then he looked down at his tattered sleeves and his scarred, bare feet. His heart hammered against his ribs. On one side was his father's voice. A dry crust of bread earned with truth is better than a feast earned with lies. On the other side was a golden ticket out of misery. With trembling fingers, Zaid picked up the pen and dipped it into the ink. Hashim grinned, already tasting victory. Sir, Zaid asked in a hollow voice, does this pen only move on paper? Or does it leave a mark on my soul too? Hashim's grin vanished. Stop with the philosophy, boy. Either take the gold and write, or get out. Go back to the graveyard and starve for all I care. The room felt smaller. The single flickering lamp made the shadows dance like ghosts. The gold coin sat on the table, mocking him. Zaid touched the pen to the paper, but suddenly the ink blurred. He saw his father's face in his mind, the face of a man who died in poverty, but with a soul that was at peace. Write it, Hashim shouted. A tiny lie for a new life, Zaid. Think about the freezing nights. Think about the hunger that makes your head spin. Just write it. Zaid took a deep breath, his fingers trembling. He began to write, but he didn't write the numbers the merchant wanted. In his beautiful flowing script, he wrote, honest bread is a blessing. A lie is just a piece of hellfire in your pocket. When Hashim read the words, his face turned a violent shade of red. He slammed his fist onto the desk, rattling the gold coins. You ungrateful brat, you dare lecture me? You stand in my house, eating my food, and look me in the eye like this? Zaid set the pen down gently. Sir, I haven't eaten a single bite of your food yet, and if the price of the truth is hunger, then I'll take the hunger. My skills are for hire, but my soul is not. In a fit of rage, Hashim grabbed Zaid by the arm and dragged him toward the heavy oak doors. He threw the boy out into the dirt. Go, let's see how long your honesty keeps you alive. I'll make sure no one in this city ever gives you a job. That is my promise. Zaid hit the ground hard. The night was silent, and the biting wind felt like needles against his skin. Empty-handed and starving, he began the long walk back to his shack. On the way, he saw a flicker of light. It was Uncle Karim, still sitting by his dim lantern. When the old man saw Zaid stumbling, he rushed over. What happened, son? Did he turn you out? Zaid broke down. Through his tears, he told him everything. Uncle Karim's eyes filled with moisture. He placed a weathered hand on Zaid's head. Son, what you did today, most men don't have the heart for it. People sell their souls for a glimpse of gold, but you walked away to keep yours clean. Don't be afraid. Life has a way of opening doors you can't see yet. Zaid sobbed. Uncle, they say honesty is rewarded, but all I feel is bitterness and hunger. Does my faith have no value at all? Karim smiled sadly and picked up a piece of leather. Look at this, Zaid. To make a shoe, the needle has to pierce the leather over and over. It must hurt. But without that pain, it would never become something strong enough to protect a person from the thorns on the road. You're feeling the needle right now, son. It's making you strong. The next morning, Zaid tried to find work. But Hashim's shadow was long. Everywhere Zaid went, people turned him away. 3 days passed. He survived only on water. His body was beginning to give up. On the 4th day, a fever took hold. Zaid lay on a thin mat in his dark shack, shivering and alone. He didn't even have the strength to reach for a cup of water. He closed his eyes, wondering if this was how it ended. Suddenly, there was a soft knock. It was Uncle Karim. He was carrying a small bowl of warm soup and some medicine. "Zaid, open your eyes. Look what I brought you," the old man whispered. Zaid struggled to sit up. "Uncle, how? You didn't have any money. Where did this come from?" Karim looked away, his eyes fixed on the floor. That's when Zaid noticed something. The old lantern, the one that had belonged to Karim's father, the one he needed to work at night, was gone. Zaid's heart sank. "Uncle, you sold your lantern? For me?" Karim wiped a stray tear from his cheek. "Son, a lantern only shows you the path. But you are a light of hope. If your light goes out, my world will be in total darkness anyway." Hearing those words, Zaid's heart overflowed. He realized in that moment that human kindness and love are far more valuable than any gold. He made a silent vow. If he survived this fever, he would spend the rest of his life honoring the sacrifice Uncle Karim had made. A week passed. Zaid's strength slowly returned, and he headed back out to find work. This time, he didn't go to the rich manors. He sat on a dusty corner of the city's busiest market, took out his wooden tablet, and began to write. He carved one sentence in beautiful, sweeping letters. "Wealth comes and goes, but character lives forever." People hurried past. Some ignored him. Others laughed at the ragged boy and his philosophy. But then, a grand caravan came to a halt. A man stepped out imposing, dressed in pure white, with eyes that looked as though they could see straight into a person's soul. It was the chief judge of the city, a man famous for his wisdom and justice. He looked at the calligraphy on the tablet, then at the boy's face. Despite the hollow cheeks of hunger, Zaid's face held a strange, calm light. "Young man," the judge asked, "did you write this?" Such heavy words for someone so young. Zaid bowed his head respectfully. "Sir, they aren't just words. They are what I've lived." The judge leaned in, intrigued. "Tell me." Zaid told him everything Seth Hashim's greed, the 3 days of hunger, and the old cobbler who sold his only light to save a life. The judge listened in silence, his expression growing more serious with every word. "Zaid," the judge said finally, "will you work for me? I need someone in my office who treats the truth like gold. But be warned, you will face powerful men. You might make enemies even more dangerous than Seth Hashim." Zaid looked the judge in the eye. "I'm ready, sir. I've learned that the truth might make you lonely, but it will never make you a coward." The judge took Zaid with him. As they made their way through the city, they crossed paths with Seth Hashim, who was busy planning his next scheme. When the merchant saw Zaid sitting beside the chief judge, his face turned ash white. He panicked, thinking Zaid had already exposed his crimes. Hashim rushed forward, bowing low before the judge. "Your Honor, don't listen to this boy. He's a thief and a liar. I caught him stealing from my manor and threw him out. He's dangerous." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Hashim, I am not trusting his words just yet. I am trusting his pen. But since you've made an accusation, show up at the court tomorrow morning. We will let the evidence speak." Zaid saw the merchant tremble with fear. But then, Zaid's eyes moved past him to the crowd. There stood Uncle Karim. The old man was weeping not from sadness, but from pride. But the danger wasn't over. Seth Hashim was a cornered snake, and a cornered snake is at its most lethal. That night, Hashim decided he couldn't let Zayd reach the courtroom alive. Late that night, Zayd lay in a small room provided by the judge. He couldn't sleep. Every rustle of the leaves outside sounded like a footstep. Hashim's threats echoed in his mind. Suddenly, shadows moved outside his window. Two masked men, the moonlight glinting off the daggers in their hands, slipped into the room. Their mission was simple: silence the only witness against Seth Hashim forever. Zayd held his breath. He didn't scream, and he didn't try to run. Instead, he reached under his pillow and pulled out his old wooden tablet, the one engraved with his father's words. As the killers loomed over him, Zayd sat up slowly. He looked at them with a calm that was haunting. "If killing me will finally fill your stomachs," Zayd said, his voice steady and soft, "then do it. But know this: your conscience will never let you sleep again." The men froze. They were hired hitmen, used to seeing terror, begging, and tears. But this 12-year-old boy didn't have fear in his eyes. He had a strange, piercing light. "Kid," one of them whispered, "Seth sent us. He's too powerful. You can't win against a man like that." Zayd looked him in the eye. "Power isn't about gold. True power is having a soul that isn't for sale. You are poor men, too. Is your dignity so cheap that you'd spill an orphan's blood for a few coins?" The words hit them like a physical blow. They were killers, yes, but they were still men. They looked at the boy, then at each other. Without a word, they lowered their daggers and vanished into the night. Zayd's honesty had become his shield. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. On one side stood Seth Hashim, draped in expensive silks and shimmering rings. On the other side stood Zayd wearing the same tattered shirt, holding the same wooden tablet, but standing taller than anyone in the room. The chief judge cleared his throat. "Seth Hashim, you have accused this boy of theft. What is your proof?" Hashim put on a show of fake disappointment. "Your Honor, this boy handled my books. He stole 5 gold coins from my private vault. I caught him red-handed and showed him mercy by only throwing him out. He is a common thief." A heavy silence fell over the room. The judge turned to Zayd. "Zayd, what do you have to say?" Zayd stepped forward. He looked at the crowd, then at the judge. "Sir, I am small and I am poor. I have no witnesses to speak for me. All I have is the register Seth gave me to write in. It contained 2 sets of books, the truth and the lie he ordered me to write." Hashim let out a mocking laugh. "That register is long gone. I burned it myself. You have nothing." Zayd didn't flinch. He actually smiled. He turned his wooden tablet over and held it up. "Seth, you can burn paper, but you can't burn a person's memory. Every bag of grain you hid, every coin you cheated from the city, I carved the real numbers into the back of this tablet in tiny letters every night. You thought I was just a scribe, but I was a witness." The judge called for the tablet. He compared the tiny, hand-carved figures to the official government records from the past few months. The numbers lined up perfectly with the missing taxes. Hashim's face turned gray. The room erupted in whispers as his lies were stripped bare in front of the entire city. The judge slammed his gavel. "Seth Hashim, you have defrauded the state and tried to ruin an innocent orphan. By the law of this city, your wealth is hereby confiscated and you are banished. You leave this city with nothing, just as you tried to leave this boy." The courtroom broke into cheers. The man who had acted like a king only yesterday was led away in chains, his head hanging in shame. Zayd stood in the center of the room, his father's old tablet clutched to his chest. The boy who had nothing had just won everything. The judge called Zayd to his side. "Son," he said, "your honesty didn't just save you today, it saved the soul of this city. From now on, you will study under my protection. And one day, you will become the chief scribe of this land. Zayd didn't go to a palace to celebrate. He ran straight to the dusty corner where Uncle Karim sat. The old man was still stitching leather, but there was a new light in his tired eyes. Zayd threw his arms around him, weeping with joy. "Uncle, look! Life found a way. You won't have to work in the dark ever again." Zayd reached into his bag and pulled out a gift, a beautiful, sturdy lantern. It was the very first thing he had bought with the reward the judge had given him. He was returning the light that Karim had sacrificed to save his life. Karim took the lantern with trembling hands. He kissed Zayd's forehead. "Son, I only gave you a small lamp, but you have lit a fire of truth for the whole city to see. Your father's soul is at peace today." They sat together in the dirt, tears streaming down their faces. They weren't tears of pain anymore. They were tears of relief. The old city, the scent of the rain, and those ancient lessons were finally witnessing a new dawn. Years passed. Zayd grew up to become the most respected official in the country. He never took a bribe, and he never let a lie touch his pen. People began to call him the truth bearer. Above the door of his home, he hung that same old wooden tablet. On it, he had carved one final message. Asterisk, it is better to die of hunger than to feed your body by selling your soul. The boat of truth may be tossed by the waves, but it will never sink. Asterisk. Zayd's life wasn't changed by luck. It was changed by his faith and his patience. He proved that a true orphan isn't someone without parents, it's someone without character.
The lesson: wealth and power are temporary, but the light of honesty never fades. When a person chooses integrity over greed, the entire universe stands up to protect them. Never trade your principles of a moment of comfort. Fortune can change in a heartbeat, but a lost character can never be bought back. If you found this story meaningful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with others so the message can reach more hearts.